The sheriff says Auburndale police officers and 2 deputies fired shots, killing a man who murdered his girlfriend.
He told her exactly what he was going to do. Not a vague warning, not an angry outburst in the heat of an argument. A stated plan, spoken out loud, 1 full day before it happened. She went to work anyway. 24 hours later, in a parking lot in Auburndale, Florida, it happened exactly the way he said it would. And when police arrived, believing the danger was already over, they quickly learned it wasn't, not even close. This is the story of Ajazia Bellamy Rodriguez.
Ajazia Bellamy Rodriguez was 20 years old, living in Lake Wales, Florida. She had a 3-year-old son, and by every account from the people who knew her, that little boy was the center of her world. She was employed at Spectrum, working as a customer service agent, still in training at the time. It wasn't a glamorous job. It was a starting point, the kind of steady position young parents take on when they're trying to build something stable for their kids, something they can count on. Ajazia wasn't someone caught up in chaos or drawn to danger. She was doing what so many young mothers do every single day, showing up, putting in the hours, trying to create a better future for her son than the one she'd been handed. Nothing about her daily routine suggested she was walking toward anything dangerous. She had a job. She had a son who depended on her.
The man Ajazia shared a child with was Derek Brathwaite, 39 years old, 19 years older than her. If you looked at his history with law enforcement, the pattern was already there, long before he ever met her. Records show 31 prior felony arrests and 24 misdemeanor arrests, 55 criminal charges in total across his lifetime. Many of those charges were tied to drug offenses. That kind of record doesn't happen overnight. It builds over years, across multiple encounters with police, multiple charges, multiple chances for intervention that, for whatever reason, never fully changed the direction his life was heading. None of that history stopped Ajazia from being in a relationship with him. That's not unusual, and it's not a reflection of poor judgment on her part. People build relationships with individuals who carry difficult pasts all the time, often holding on to hope that the past will stay exactly that, in the past, and won't follow them into the present. But a record like Brathwaite's isn't just a list of old mistakes sitting in a file somewhere. It's a pattern, and patterns, more often than people want to admit, tend to repeat themselves, especially when nothing has fundamentally changed.
By the summer of 2026, Derek Brathwaite and Ajazia shared more than a relationship. They shared a 3-year-old son, a connection that would tie them together no matter what came next, for better, or as it turned out, for far worse.
One day before Ajazia Bellamy Rodriguez died, Derek Brathwaite told her exactly what he intended to do. According to a witness who later spoke with investigators, Brathwaite stated his intentions plainly. He said he planned to end her life and then his own. This wasn't vague anger. It wasn't a heated comment thrown out in the middle of an argument and forgotten 5 minutes later. It was a stated plan, specific enough that a witness remembered the exact wording well enough to repeat it to police afterward. In situations involving intimate partner violence, this kind of statement carries a different weight than a general threat. A specific plan
spoken aloud, naming intended harm toward another person and toward himself, is widely recognized as one of the clearest warning signs there is. There's no public record of what Ajazia did with that information in the hours that followed. Whether she told anyone else, whether she considered not going in the next day. What is known is that by the next morning, that threat was already 24 hours old, and Ajazia went about her day regardless. For a young mother holding a job, a routine, and a 3-year-old son who depended on her, walking away from an ordinary Friday isn't always a simple decision, even after hearing something like that the night before.
Friday, July 10th, 2026. An ordinary morning in Lake Wales, Florida. Ajazia woke up and followed her usual routine. She got her 3-year-old son ready and drove him to Waverly, a short trip north, where she dropped him off at the home of Derek Brathwaite's parents. It was a normal arrangement, one they'd clearly done before, the kind of routine built quietly over months of shared parenting, grandparents watching the baby while both parents worked. From there, Ajazia continued her drive toward Auburndale. Along the way, she made a quick stop at a Wendy's on Highway 92, picking up a drink and something to eat before heading in for her shift. The same small ritual most people go through without a second thought. Every part of this morning followed a pattern. Nothing about the drive, the drop-off, or the stop for breakfast suggested anything out of the ordinary. It was the kind of routine repeated by working parents everywhere, moving through a Friday morning one small task at a time, unaware of what waited at the end of it. Ajazia arrived at the Spectrum store on US Highway 92 in Auburndale just after 9 o'clock. She pulled into the employee parking lot for what should have been a regular start to her shift. Derek Brathwaite was already there, waiting for her. What happened next took only seconds. According to witnesses, Brathwaite approached Ajazia as she made her way toward the building. A worker nearby reported hearing a rapid series of sounds close together. Ajazia was found beside her own vehicle, having suffered serious injuries. Emergency responders were called immediately, but she could not be saved. She was pronounced dead at the scene. Whatever tension had existed between Ajazia and Derek Brathwaite, whatever history the two of them carried, it came to an end in under a minute, in a parking lot, in broad daylight, on a Friday morning like any other. Employees nearby began calling 911 within moments of the incident. Some callers described what they'd heard. Others reported concern that Brathwaite may have harmed himself as well. That second detail would turn out to be accurate, because Brathwaite didn't leave the scene. He remained there, now in serious condition himself, only steps away from where Ajazia had just fallen. By the time officers arrived, minutes later, the situation at that Spectrum parking lot was far from resolved. Auburndale police and Polk County Sheriff's deputies were already en route before anyone fully understood what they were walking into. The first calls into dispatch, just after 9:12 that morning, described a possible suicide in progress at the Spectrum employee parking lot. But as officers made their way to the scene, more calls started coming in, this time reporting that shots were still being fired. For the responding officers and deputies, that combination created an unclear picture. A reported suicide, then reports of ongoing gunfire. Two pieces of information that didn't fully line up,
arriving in real time, with no way to know exactly what they'd find until they physically got there themselves. When they reached the parking lot, both pieces of information turned out to be true, just not in the way anyone expected walking in. They found Ajazia on the ground near her vehicle. And a short distance away, they found Derek Brathwaite, also on the ground, in serious condition from an apparent self-inflicted injury. He was still conscious, and he was still holding a firearm in his hand.
Officers began giving him commands immediately. Drop the weapon. Multiple times, repeated clearly and loudly, giving him every opportunity to comply before anything else happened. He didn't. Instead of complying with the commands he was given, Brathwaite began manipulating the firearm still in his hand. According to Sheriff Grady Judd and Auburndale's police chief, it appeared he may have been attempting to clear a malfunction with the weapon. Whatever the reason, what happened next left officers with no other option. He turned the gun in the direction of the officers and deputies standing over him. 5 Auburndale police officers and 2 Polk County Sheriff's deputies, 7 law enforcement personnel in total, responded to the threat. Brathwaite did not survive the encounter. Despite everything that had already happened that morning, officers immediately began attempting life-saving measures on him. It's standard procedure, regardless of the circumstances that led to that moment. Their efforts weren't successful. No officer or deputy on scene was harmed during the encounter. By 9:12 that morning, in a parking lot outside a Spectrum store in Auburndale, 2 people were gone: a 20-year-old mother and the father of her 3-year-old son. Both lost within minutes of each other, in the same location, as a direct result of decisions Derek Brathwaite had made the day before and carried through with. If a case like this keeps you engaged, this is exactly the kind of investigation we cover here. Cases where the full picture only comes together piece by piece, long after the initial headlines fade and everyone else has moved on. Subscribe now so you don't miss what comes next, because Sheriff Judd's own words about this case are some of the most direct and unflinching you'll hear in any investigation like it. Now, back to the case.
Later that day, Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd stood before cameras to address what had happened.
With us today, I am here with my dear friend and the Chief of Police from Auburndale, and it is important that you understand that we work together as a team. Our regional dispatch has us both on the same channel. So any activity that the Auburndale police see, the Sheriff's Office sees as well. And about 9:12 hours this morning, we received a 911 call. And that 911 call said, hey, there's a suicide in the parking lot, the employee's parking lot. We also see this man. He is Dedrick Brathwaite. He's 39 years of age. He is laying on the ground holding a firearm in his hand. Our deputies and officers approach. And when they approach, he starts manipulating the gun and then pointed it in their direction. 5 Auburndale police officers and 2 deputy sheriffs shot. And they shot a multiple number of times. And then we began emergency.
He walked reporters through the timeline as investigators understood it. The initial call reporting a possible suicide.
the follow-up calls describing ongoing gunfire. Officers and deputies responding together, guided by shared regional dispatch between the sheriff's office and Auburndale police. Judd confirmed publicly what a witness had already told investigators, that Brathwaite had made his intentions known to Ajazia the day before. In his words, a stated plan to harm her and then himself. He described it as one of the clearest examples he'd encountered of what law enforcement refers to as suicide by cop, a person who attempts to end their own life first, and when that fails, forces officers into a position where they have no choice but to respond. Standing beside a printed copy of Brathwaite's criminal history, Judd read the numbers aloud for the room. 31 prior felony arrests, 24 misdemeanor arrests, 55 charges total. He was direct in his assessment, stating plainly that Brathwaite was responsible for the death of the mother of his 3-year-old child, and had then turned a firearm toward responding officers, leaving them no option but to respond in order to protect themselves and each other.
Auburndale's police chief joined him, thanking his officers for their training and their response under extraordinary pressure, while acknowledging the toll these situations take on the people who wear the badge every single day. With both Ajazia and Derek Brathwaite gone, this case will never see a trial. No jury, no defense attorney, no courtroom testimony stretching across weeks or months. What follows instead is a process that applies any time officers use deadly force, regardless of how clear the circumstances appear at the scene. In Florida, that means an independent review through the 10th Judicial Circuit's Officer-Involved Deadly Incident Task Force, a body made up of representatives from multiple agencies working alongside prosecutors from the state attorney's office. Investigators pulled surveillance footage from the Spectrum property itself. They collected body camera recordings from every officer and deputy on scene. They spoke with witnesses who had heard the commotion, who had placed the 911 calls, who had watched parts of it unfold from a distance.
All 5 Auburndale officers and both Polk County deputies involved were placed on standard administrative leave with pay, a routine step whenever force of this kind is used, paired with a required mental health evaluation before any of them returned to active duty. Sheriff Judd addressed the process directly, acknowledging that Florida's Marsy's Law prevented him from releasing the officers' names for at least 72 hours following the incident, even though he expressed disagreement with that particular restriction. For investigators, the review exists to confirm what already appeared clear on scene, not to search for some hidden alternative explanation. 7 officers responding to a man already connected to a fatality that morning, who then turned a weapon in their direction after repeated warnings to lower it.
At the center of everything that happened on July 10th is a 3-year-old boy who now has neither parent, not because of an accident, not because of illness, because his father made a decision the night before, said it out loud, and carried it through exactly as planned, without hesitation. Spectrum released a statement afterward, expressing condolences to everyone affected and confirming full cooperation with the ongoing investigation, while emphasizing the safety of their employees moving forward. In the days that followed, the Auburndale community came together around Ajazia's family and the young son she left behind, offering support in whatever ways they could during an unimaginable loss that touched far more people than just her immediate family. Ajazia Bellamy Rodriguez was 20 years old. She had a job, a routine, and a 3-year-old son who depended on her every single day.
she had a threat spoken into existence the night before she died, and she still got up the next morning and went to work, the way so many people do, carrying weight nobody else could fully see. This case sits at one of the hardest edges of true crime reporting, the part that doesn't offer a tidy resolution or a satisfying twist. A threat was made, it was specific, it was heard, and 24 hours later, it happened exactly the way it was described, down to the very last detail. If there's one thing worth carrying with you after this video ends, it's this. Warnings like that are rarely empty. If someone tells you exactly what they intend to do, believe them and treat it as a plan, not an outburst that will simply pass with time. If cases like this matter to you, the way Ajazia's story clearly deserved to be told with care and accuracy, subscribe and stay with us, because we'll keep bringing these stories forward, the ones that need to be remembered long after the headlines disappear. May Ajazia Bellamy Rodriguez rest